The notification came first. Unauthorized charge. $31,450. Pending. I stared at the screen, waiting for the app to correct itself. It didn't. The amount sat there, heavy and specific, like an accusation. That money wasn't extra. It was payroll buffer. It was quarterly taxes. It was the margin that kept my firm breathing when a client paid late. A second notification followed almost immediately. A text from my mother. Don't overthink this. Maya, Avery's brand is finally gaining momentum. This is a family investment. That was it. No question. No warning. Just a conclusion delivered as fact. The story in the video is a creative work by the author. All characters and events are fictional, crafted to convey a humanistic message and the values of family. I typed back, then erased it. Typed again, erased that too. My phone buzzed, as if irritated by my silence. You're working late anyway, my mother added. You always handle these things best. Handle. Not ask, not discuss. Handle. I called her instead. She answered on the second ring, already defensive. Before you say anything, she said, this is for Avery's future. It's my company's money. I said, you didn't ask. We didn't need to, she replied. You're the responsible one. There it was. The compliment that always came with a bill attached. Avery booked the villa deposit today. My mother continued. The concierge needed confirmation immediately. Opportunities don't wait. I didn't agree to fund a vacation. I said, it's not a vacation. She snapped. It's content, engagement, visibility, and my consent. I asked. Silence. Then a sigh. The kind that suggested I was being difficult. Maya, this isn't the time to nickel and dime family. $31,450 is not nickel and diming. I said, that money pays people. She's your sister. And this is my livelihood. My mother's voice softened, which somehow made it worse. You'll be fine. You always are. That was when I understood. Fine was the role they had written for me. Fine meant absorbing impact so no one else had to. I need you to reverse it, I said. We can't, she replied too quickly. It's already processing. I hung up before she could explain why processing mattered more than permission. The space heater clicked on beside me, struggling. I opened my banking app again, slower this time. Report unauthorized activity. Yes. Freeze associated card. Yes. Cooperate with investigation. Yes. A prompt appeared asking if I wanted to escalate further. I hovered over the option, then selected Not Yet. My phone buzzed again. A message from Avery this time. You're going to love the place, she wrote. This is going to change everything. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat there and let the quiet settle. Responsibility had never been praise. It was permission. Permission to take, to decide, to assume I would clean up the aftermath. If this feels familiar, if you've ever been placed in that role without agreeing to it, stay with me. You're not alone in this. I scrolled through my contacts, past family names that felt suddenly formal, almost distant. I stopped at one I hadn't touched in years. Douglas Price. I didn't rehearse. I just called. He answered with a flat, guarded hello. This is Maya Collins, I said. I have a property near Flathead Lake. I'm looking to sell quietly. Fast. There was a pause. Then, are there complications? Yes, I said, but they're mine to resolve. Another pause. Longer this time. Send me the details. He said, we'll talk tomorrow. When the call ended, I felt something shift. Not relief, control. The charge was still there. The money was still gone. But for the first time that night, the decision wasn't already made for me. I didn't sleep. Not because I was panicking, but because panic would have implied uncertainty. By morning, I was clear. My phone buzzed again while I was making coffee. My mother. I let it ring. Then my father. Then Avery. The pattern was familiar. First concern, then irritation, then pressure. I set the phone face down on the counter and opened my laptop instead. The bank's fraud department called at 8:30. A woman with a steady voice and no interest in family dynamics. Ms. Collins, she said. We're confirming an unauthorized charge in the amount of $31,450. Can you verify that you did not approve this transaction? I did not, I said. No verbal or written consent. Thank you. We've frozen the associated card and flagged the account for review. Will the funds be returned if fraud is confirmed? Provisional credit will be issued while the investigation continues. And escalation, I asked. There was a brief pause. If evidence supports criminal activity, we may recommend further action. I understand. I said, please proceed. She didn't ask why my family had access. She didn't ask how this would affect holidays or birthdays. She just documented facts. I appreciated that more than she could have known. My father left a voicemail while I was on the call. Maya, he said, his tone measured, almost disappointed. Your mother tells me you're upset. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. Bigger, as if size was the issue. I didn't call him back. Instead, I forwarded the fraud confirmation email to my attorney. One line in the message body. I need advice. Urgent. She replied within the hour. We spoke briefly. No dramatics. No moral lectures. If you file a police report immediately, she said, the investigation becomes formal. That could freeze multiple accounts, business and personal. And if I don't, I said, then you retain flexibility, she replied. You preserve liquidity. I ended the call knowing exactly which currency mattered most to me. By noon, Avery's texts had shifted tone. Why are you ignoring me? Then, Mom's really stressed. Then, you're overreacting. I finally answered one message. Do not charge my accounts again. 3 minutes later, my mother called. I don't understand why you're doing this, she said, skipping hello. You're embarrassing us. I'm protecting myself. I said, from your own family, from anyone who thinks my consent is optional. Silence stretched between us, taut and unfamiliar. You're making this transactional, she said finally. No, I replied. It already was. I just stopped pretending otherwise. I ended the call before she could recover. That afternoon, I opened my contacts again. I didn't hesitate this time. Douglas Price answered with the same guarded tone as the night before. I have the documents ready, I said. Deed, renovation records, tax history. Good, he replied. We'll speak in person. When the call ended, my phone stayed quiet. For the first time in years, no one was telling me what I owed them. Silence, I realized, wasn't avoidance. It was leverage. The lake house was never meant to be sentimental. I bought it because the numbers worked. Distressed property, good bones, bad timing for the seller. I was 26, exhausted, and tired of watching my money sit still while everyone else made decisions for me. When I told my parents, my father said, "You're brave." My mother said, "You're reckless." Avery said, "It's huge." They visited once during the renovation. My father walked through the stripped-down interior, hands in his pockets, nodding like he understood sweat. "You're really doing all this yourself?" he asked. "I am," I said. He smiled, thin and impressed. "Must be nice to have the time. It took 2 summers. I worked client jobs during the week and rebuilt the house on weekends. I paid contractors when I had to. I learned everything else because learning was cheaper than asking for help." The first winter after it was finished, my parents called. "Things are tight," my mother said. "Just for a few months," my father added, "until an investment matures." I told myself it made sense. The house would be occupied. They would maintain it. Family helps family. They moved in with suitcases and opinions. At first, they asked, "Is it okay if we paint this room? Can we replace the appliances?" Then they stopped. By the second year, Avery had claimed the sunroom, ring light, neutral backdrops. She filmed every morning, coffee steaming, the lake framed behind her like it had always belonged to her. One afternoon, I stopped by unannounced. Avery was live. "This is my favorite place in the world," she said to her phone. "It's where I feel most myself." I waited until she ended the stream. "You didn't mention it's my house," I said. She laughed. "People don't care about that stuff. They might care that I pay for it," I said. My mother stepped in immediately. "Don't nitpick. You know what she meant." What she meant, I realized later, was that my role was invisible by design. Over the years, I paid everything: mortgage, property taxes, utilities, snow removal, internet fast enough for uploads and live streams. When I mentioned rent, my father said, "Why would we pay you? It all stays in the family." When Avery landed a brand deal, my mother called me. "She needs better lighting," she said. "And maybe new furniture. Something aspirational." "I didn't budget for that," I said. "You always figure it out," she replied. That was the refrain. Always. The last time I visited before this week, my father poured himself a drink from a bottle I didn't remember buying. "You've done well for yourself," he said. "This place proves it." I looked around at the house I rebuilt, maintained, and quietly funded. "I didn't do this to prove anything," I said. He smiled like I was being modest. Now, sitting alone with the memory of that fraud alert still sharp in my chest, the truth settled without resistance. I hadn't been generous. I had been convenient. The house wasn't home to them because they loved it. It was home because it cost them nothing. I opened my laptop and pulled up the property records. Every payment, every transfer, years of quiet support, neatly itemized. I hadn't been helping my family survive. I had been subsidizing a story where I didn't exist. Douglas Price did not ask how I was doing. He glanced at the folder I placed on the table between us and said, "You move quickly." "I don't like dragging things out," I replied. He nodded once, as if that confirmed something he already suspected. Douglas was known in town as difficult, private, the kind of man people dismissed because he didn't bother to soften his edges. He opened the folder without ceremony. Deed, renovation records, tax history, clean, organized. "This is the lake house near Flathead," he said. "Not a question." "Yes. You're asking below market, by a margin that reflects urgency," I said. He looked up at me then. Not surprised. Interested. Cash close. I continued. 10 business days. Private title company. No inspections. Douglas leaned back. "Why the rush? My parents are living there?" I said. I didn't add context. I didn't need to. His mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. Recognition. "And they don't know you're selling," he said. "They know I own it." "That's not the same thing," he replied. I felt the power shift, subtle but real. He wasn't judging me. He was assessing the situation as it was. "Possession transfers immediately upon recording," he said. "They would need notice." "I'll handle that," I said, quietly. He added, "Yes." He tapped the folder once. 20% under market is generous. "I'm paying for certainty," I said. Douglas studied me for a moment longer, then closed the folder. "I'll proceed," he said. "But understand this isn't a favor. I'm not asking for one." "Good," he replied. "I don't do favors. I do transactions." My phone buzzed on the table. My father's name flashed across the screen. Douglas noticed. "That them. Yes." "You're not answering," he said. "No." He stood, extending his hand. His grip was firm. Professional. "I'll have my attorney coordinate with yours," he said. 10 business days. "Thank you," I said. He paused, then spoke again, quieter this time. "For what it's worth," he said. "People confuse silence with weakness. They usually regret it." I watched him leave before picking up my phone. 3 missed calls, 2 messages. My mother's text was the last one. "We need to talk about your tone." I turned the phone face down and slid it into my bag. The offer was made. The terms were set. For the first time since that charge appeared on my screen, the timeline belonged to me. I drove to the lake house the next morning without telling anyone. The gate opened on the first try. Of course it did. No one had ever bothered to change the code. Why would they? When they didn't believe anything there could be taken from them inside, the heat was high. Too high. Every light was on. Packages were stacked by the door, most of them addressed to Avery. I stepped over them without slowing down. My father's voice echoed in my head from years earlier. It's nice having the place lived in. What he meant was paid for. I went straight to the study. The file cabinet was where I'd left it, pushed back against the wall. When I opened it, the folders were rearranged, not sloppily, deliberately. The tax folder was thinner than it should have been. I sat down and opened my laptop, logged into my business cloud, and pulled up the backups. The main directory was intact. Subfolders were missing, not gone. Edited. My phone buzzed. My father. I answered. "You're at the house," he said. Not a question. "Yes," I replied. "You should have told us," he said. "Avery's filming later. I'm working," I said. There was a pause. Then, "Did you talk to Douglas Price?" I looked at the open cabinet in front of me. "Why, he called the county office yesterday," my father said, "asking about the property." So that's unnecessary," he said. "We can resolve whatever this is internally." "I'm sure you'd like that," I said. His tone hardened. "You're being dramatic." I ended the call. Back on my laptop, I opened the file history. Timestamps didn't align. Creation dates were off by months. One file stood out. A scanned authorization form. I opened it. It was a bank document granting access to my tax reserve account. Full authority. Signed 6 months earlier. The name at the bottom was mine. The signature was close. Careful. The kind of handwriting you get when someone practices first. But it wasn't mine. The tail of the M curved too far. The spacing was wrong. The pressure inconsistent. Small details. Obvious once you stopped wanting to miss them. I checked the metadata, uploaded from my father's laptop, 6 months ago, modified multiple times. I felt something settle in my chest. Not shock, recognition. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't panic or entitlement gone too far. This was planning. My phone rang again. My mother this time. "Maya," she said, breathless. "Your father says you're making threats." I found the authorization form. I said, silence. "You gave him access to my account." I continued. "You let him forge my signature." Her voice dropped. "We didn't think you'd notice." "Of course you didn't," I said. "We were going to tell you." She insisted. "After the trip. You've been taking money for months." I said. "This wasn't about the villa. We were protecting you," she said quickly. "Your father knows finances. He was making sure things were handled. He was stealing from me," I said. "He's your father. That doesn't change what it's called." I hung up and called my attorney. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she spoke evenly. "This qualifies as forgery and wire fraud," she said. "If you file a report now, the investigation becomes criminal. And my accounts, I asked. Frozen, possibly for months." I closed the laptop slowly. "What if I wait?" I said. "Then you maintain control." She replied, "You can proceed with the sale. Evidence can be preserved. Would you advise that?" I asked. "I would." She said, "Justice is important. Liquidity is survival." When the call ended, the house felt quieter, not empty. Exposed. I gathered the documents I needed: deed, authorization form, screenshots of the metadata. I didn't take any of the personal items, not the photos, not the furniture, not the pieces of a life that had never been mine to begin with. At the door, my phone buzzed again. A message from Avery. "Are you coming back for dinner?" I locked the door behind me and walked away. The sale was no longer leverage. It was necessity. The paperwork moved faster than I expected, not because anyone was rushing on my behalf, but because everything was clean, ownership was clear, records were intact. There were no favors to negotiate, no explanations required. Douglas Price called 2 days later. "My attorney is ready," he said. "Title confirmed. No liens." "Good," I replied. "Your parents are still there," he added. "I know. Once we close, possession transfers immediately," he said. "You won't be able to soften that." "I'm not looking to," I said. There was a pause. "You're certain?" "Yes." He didn't ask again. My attorney sent over the draft agreement that afternoon. 10 business days. Cash transfer. Quiet close. I read every line, then signed. That night, my father called. "This has gone far enough," he said. "You're putting us in an impossible position." "You did that," I replied. "We raised you," he said. "We sacrificed for you. I have the bank authorization form," I said, "with your metadata on it." Silence. "You think threatening me is wise," he said carefully. "I'm not threatening you." I replied, "I'm choosing not to protect you." My mother texted moments later. "We can fix this if you stop." "I already did," I wrote back. The bank followed up the next morning. Another measured voice. Another neutral tone. "We've issued provisional credit for the disputed amount," the representative said. "The investigation remains open." "Understood," I replied. "If you wish to pursue charges later, evidence will be preserved." "I know," I said. By the end of the week, the funds from the sale were wired into my account. $920,000. Net. Verified. I sat at my desk and watched the balance update. Not relieved, grounded. Douglas sent a final message. "Recording scheduled. I'll handle possession." "Thank you," I replied. That night, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no apologies, no explanations. I opened a new folder on my computer and labeled it clearly. Evidence. Inside, I saved the forged document, the transaction logs, the metadata, not as a weapon, as a boundary. The sale didn't feel like revenge. Revenge would have required emotion. This required discipline. I turned off the lights and let the silence settle. Steady and deliberate. For the first time in years, nothing was being taken from me. I didn't go to the lake house. I didn't need to. On the morning they returned, my phone buzzed with a notification from the security app. Motion detected, driveway. I opened the live feed. My parents' car rolled up first, followed by a second vehicle loaded with luggage. Avery stepped out before the engine was fully off, phone already in her hand, sunglasses still on. She looked around, confused, then annoyed. My father walked straight to the gate keypad. He punched in the code once. Nothing happened. He tried again, harder this time, as if force might convince the system. My mother said something I couldn't hear, gesturing sharply toward the house. Avery lifted her phone, angling it toward herself. I watched her lips form a familiar smile. "Home sweet," she began. The front door opened behind them. Douglas Price stepped onto the porch, holding a mug in one hand and a folder in the other. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He waited until they noticed him. My father turned first. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. Douglas set the mug down. "You're trespassing," he said calmly. My mother laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "This is our home." Douglas opened the folder. "It's not," he replied. "It's mine." My father moved forward, anger finally breaking through confusion. "You don't belong here." Douglas didn't react. He took out a single sheet of paper and held it up. "The deed. Recorded. Final. I took possession this morning," he said. "You were given notice. We were in Europe." My mother snapped. "You can't do this." "I can," Douglas said. "And I did." Avery stepped closer. Phone still recording. "This is insane," she said loudly. "Do you know who we are?" Douglas turned to her. "Recording is not permitted on private property." Her smile faltered. "I'm just documenting." "Turn it off," he said. She didn't. Douglas pulled out his phone. "Sheriff's office," he said, already dialing. My father grabbed the gate, rattling it. "You think you've won something," he yelled. "You think this makes you important." Douglas didn't look at him. "I think you have 5 minutes to leave." My mother's shoulders slumped. She leaned against the car, hands shaking. Avery lowered her phone. Finally silent. I watched my father shrink in real time, not physically. Something else. Authority draining out of him with every second Douglas stood there, unmoved. The call ended. Douglas slipped his phone back into his pocket. "They're on their way," he said. That was when my phone started ringing. My mother, my father, Avery. I let it ring. On the screen, my family stood in the driveway of a house that no longer answered to their names. Neighbors slowed their cars. Someone across the street watched from a window. Avery started crying, stamping her foot. Her suitcase tipped over beside her. My father said something low and furious. My mother covered her face. Douglas stepped back into the house and closed the door. The feed froze. I closed the app. The phone kept buzzing on the table beside me, vibrating itself closer to the edge with each call. I didn't move it. I let it ring until it stopped on its own. For years, they had lived comfortably inside a story I paid for. That morning, they learned what it felt like to be written out of it. The calls didn't stop when the feed went dark. They multiplied. My phone lit up again and again, vibrating against the table like it was trying to escape. I didn't answer. I watched the names appear, disappear, return. My mother left the first voicemail. "Maya, there has been a terrible mistake," she said, breath unsteady. "The neighbors are watching. This is humiliating." My father's message came next, colder. "You've gone too far. We will talk about this like adults." Then Avery. "You can't do this to us," she said, her voice breaking. "We have nowhere to go." I listened to each message once, not because I owed them that, but because I needed to hear the shift. The certainty was gone. The authority was gone. All that remained was panic. I typed a response, deleted it, then typed again. "This is not a mistake," I wrote. "You've been using my accounts without permission." I stared at the screen before sending it. Then I didn't. Instead, I archived the messages, one by one, not deleted, preserved. The phone rang again. I turned it face down. For years, silence had been used against me. Questions unanswered, boundaries ignored, decisions made in rooms I wasn't invited into. Now the silence belonged to me. I opened my laptop and checked my calendar, meetings, deadlines, work that existed outside of them. A notification popped up from my attorney. "Let me know if they contact you directly." I replied with a single word. "They are." I set the phone down and left it there, buzzing and insistent, until it finally stopped. When the quiet returned, it didn't feel empty. It felt deliberate. 3 months later, my life is quieter in ways I didn't know were possible. The townhouse I live in now belongs entirely to me. No mortgage, no shared access, no explanations required. When my phone rings, it's clients or contractors, not people reminding me of who they think I owe. My attorney calls one afternoon while I'm reviewing drawings. The bank investigation is concluding. She says, "Evidence has been preserved. And next steps?" I reply, "That depends on you," she says. Charges remain an option. I thank her and hang up. The choice sits with me, solid and patient. A week later, a certified envelope arrives. My father's name appears in the return address, written carefully, like presentation might still matter. I don't open it right away. I place it in a drawer with the rest of the documentation. Leverage doesn't need to be loud. I hear updates through the same quiet channels I always did. My parents are renting a small place on the edge of town. My mother tells anyone who will listen that I abandoned them. Fewer people listen now. Avery took a receptionist job at a dental office. She doesn't post much anymore. My phone buzzes one evening while I'm cooking. An unknown number. Maya. A man says cautiously, "This is your father." I let the silence stretch. "I just wanted to say," he continues, "we're trying to move forward." "So am I." I reply. He exhales. "We're still family." I don't argue. I don't correct him. "I'm busy," I say, and end the call. Later that night, I sit on the floor with my back against the couch, laptop open, reviewing the next project my firm will take on. A public library, long timelines, steady work, honest numbers. If you're listening to this and recognizing pieces of your own life, stay with that feeling. Pay attention to where your energy goes and who assumes it belongs to them. I didn't take anyone's home. I stopped letting them live inside mine. And that decision changed everything.